Hello, welcome to the Jim Clyber Show. Today is September 3rd, Thursday, 2020. And today, what are we going to talk about today? First, we're going to turn off the phone so we don't get bothered. But, this is what I want to talk about today. I mean, a lot of these conversations focus on politics, but let's continue with the politics for now, because in the U.S., this is an important season. I think there's less than 70 days, maybe 68 days or something left until the election, to the general election, when we elect new national members of the House of Representatives, also national members of the U.S. Congress, or U.S. Senate, and also the President and Vice President of the United States. So what I want to talk about today is the concept of winning an election, and why I think striving to just win doesn't defeat voter suppression. So if, say, for example, Joe Biden is just trying to win the election, maybe a better example is let's go back to with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in 2016. If the goal for Hillary was to win the election, then if people thought that she was going to win, then there's not much incentive for them to go out and vote. And I think this happened a lot. I think a lot of the voter suppression that happened in 2016 was people assuming that Hillary was going to win the election. So why bother? I mean, it's a lot of work for me. I have to go down to the polling station. I may have to take off a day from work. I may have to juggle some schedules with the kids and things like this just so I can go vote. So why vote if I know she's going to win? Like, I'm pretty sure she'll win. And what happened was she didn't win. She won the popular vote, but she didn't win the Electoral College vote. And I worry that the similar thing may happen in this election, where people may look at the polls and they may assume, person A or person B are going to win. Why should I go vote? And I think one of the challenges that we have in the U.S. in general is people not thinking that their vote counts. We don't think that our vote matters that much, and it's not that important. In a way, it can be a very low energy requirement. It doesn't, you go into the voting booth and you just kind of check off a few boxes and you're done. It doesn't require a lot of energy many times to do, and so therefore it may not feel as important as it could be. And yet I think this idea of just trying to winning is what matters, doesn't bode well for getting people to come out and vote. So what I want to talk about is about winning, not just winning, but by winning as much as possible, and how winning an election 51% to 49% is different than winning an election 60% to 40%, which is different winning election 70 to 30 or 80 to 20 or 90 to 10 or 99 to 1 or 100 to 0. The numbers matter, not because it has any impact on whether the person gets elected to office or not, because to win, at least in many systems in the US, you just need a majority. You just need more than the other person has, or majority of the votes, so 51%. But winning by such a large margin, or they would often call a landslide victory, sends a message. It sends a message about how united the country is. It sends a message about how much we are in favor of something or against something. It sends a message beyond the the winner and the loser, but the feeling of the election. And so when we're trying to go for something like a landslide, or when we're trying to win 70-30 instead of 51-49, it requires more people to show up. And if the goal is to win only 70-30 and the polls say, okay, it's probably going to be 70-30, then it's likely other people won't show up. So not having the goal be to win by a specific number or to just win, but to win by as much as possible, because then that shows a certain unity and almost, what do they call it? Unanimity to a victory. If it can become a unanimous victory, then it's very hard to dispute, as long as, of course, the procedures are going well. There are many unanimous victories in foreign countries, many African countries and Eastern European and some other countries, maybe even China, have unanimous victories in their elections, but they didn't really have any competition, or the process wasn't fair. When a person wins 99% all the time, it's a little suspect, at least to me. So I say this because I think there are a lot of, I personally worry that Donald Trump will get elected again. And I think a much stronger strategy for the Democrats than to simply elect Joe Biden or have Joe Biden win is to try to have Joe Biden win by as much as possible, to send a clear message to Donald Trump, but also to the rest of the world on two things. On one thing is the referendum on how Donald Trump has been leading and managing this country through the pandemic and through many, many other situations, and his behaviors. But also it's to show unity and to show strong support behind a single candidate. And when I say single candidate, I mean, as I talked about in a previous episode, I see Joe Biden not as a president, but more, as a president, but not as the superstar, but more as the coach who is going to be ushering a very strong team underneath him, both within the government and within the nation, and really trying to build this team and coach this team to a victory. When I talk about landslide victories, it's sometimes in sports, there is the element of not trying to run up the score. It means you're playing a game against somebody and you're winning by a lot, and you slow down. You don't try to get as many goals or score as many runs as you possibly could. For example, this happened the other day in Major League Baseball. I can't remember which team it was. I think it was Oakland Athletics. They were beating the Texas Rangers by 6 runs or 9 runs, and it was in one of the early innings. And there's been this unwritten rule in baseball that if you have 3 balls and no strikes on you, you need 4 balls to get a walk and 3 strikes to strike out. 3 balls and no strikes, and they throw a pitch down the middle of the plate, you're supposed to take it. You're supposed to just let it go, because especially when your team is winning by a lot. And that team was winning by a lot, and they had runners on all 3 bases. And there was a pitch right down the middle of the plate, and the guy swung and got a home run. So he got a grand slam and increased the lead by 4 runs. And many people were very angry and frustrated with this, because it broke kind of the norm. And you'll see this in a lot of sports. A lot of sports, there's often a very unwritten rule where if one team is winning by a lot, to be kind and to be fair to the other team, they slow down and kind of take it easy. They don't try to score as much. They play more defense, and they just slow down the pace of the game. That can change sometimes, and when that typically changes, when a team typically tries to run the score up on somebody else, it's when the team that is winning it's often when the team that's winning perceives the other team as cheating and playing unfairly. It's the ones who, if I'm playing a soccer game or a football match, as you would say over on the other side of the pond, if I'm in one of those games, and the team is like elbowing me and kicking me and doing a lot of dirty plays and taking cheap shots at some of our players and tackling from behind and really trying to hurt some of our players, and this is something especially that has lasted a few different games, like it's built up over time, then there may be a very strong desire on the winning team to run up the score, to humiliate the other side, basically. So to say that we're not going to stand for this cheap stuff that you're doing, and we're going to try our best to show you that it's not going to work, and we're just going to run up the score and prove to you that this is not the way you want to go about it, because we'll humiliate you. And the idea with that is to send a very clear message that we do not stand for what you're doing. And we will show you how much we don't stand for it. And so when I think about this upcoming election, I believe that if the Democrats want Joe Biden to win, it's not about winning. And it's not just the Democrats. It's the people who... It's almost as this election coming up for the president and the vice president, and arguably even for the senators and the representatives, is a referendum on Trump and the people who have stood with Trump. And one of the strongest ways to clearly send a message that we do not stand for these behaviors and these actions and this disregard for the written law and many of these things that we've seen happen, or the absolute blind loyalty to a leader. One of the strongest ways to send that message is to try to win by as much as possible within the rules, but still try to get everyone to show up, because in that scenario, every single vote counts. The more votes we get, the stronger the vote looks, the stronger the message that is being sent. So I think that is something, I think that's a strategy that people on the left, even on the right, could use to try to encourage voting, because it's not just about winning, it's trying to win by a large margin so that we send a clear message. And that strategy could get a lot of people out to vote, and could be an antidote to a lot of the voter suppression tactics and techniques that a lot of organizations and individuals are pushing, because they're afraid if a lot of people come out to vote. Who knows? So that's one topic. Let's see. I'm going to do another topic. Another topic is going to be gun control. Let's just go deep into all this stuff. Why not? I don't know if people care to hear this stuff, but I realize I have a lot of these conversations with close friends and family, and I just repeat the same things over and over again. So while I'm saying them to you right now, they seem to me as, I don't know, I've become accustomed to some of these things, but maybe to you, they may be something you've never heard before. I don't know. So gun control. The problem I see with gun control is calling it gun control. So the people who want there to be fewer guns and want there to be more regulations on guns are fine with it. Yes, we would like to control the guns. The people who want to keep their guns don't want other people controlling their guns, I'm pretty sure. And so I imagine many people who want to have guns have them for multiple reasons. I'm sure some people want to have them because they want to go hunting. I'm sure some people want to have them because they like to collect them as a beautiful human invention, like just a work of art, like the engineering marvel of them. Some people collect them for the historical value because it's a World War II gun, or things like that. Some people want to have the guns for personal protection. Some people want to have the guns for like governmental protection. And so for these latter two groups, the ones who want it for personal protection, the ones who want it for protection against the government, gun control may not work. The concept of I am going to take your guns, or I want you to register your guns, may not work. For the group that just wants to hunt, or the group that wants to collect them, or the group, they may be fine with that. Like, okay, fine, I'll register my gun, no problem. If I'm a collector, then I sometimes maybe want the world to know how many guns I have, or I want people to know just which guns I have, part of my collection. But maybe not. But I can imagine the group that is that has deep fear of neighbors, friends, family, ex-spouses, ex-girlfriends, boyfriends, the police, or fear of the government, or fear of et cetera, don't necessarily want someone to come take their gun. Because if I have fear, I'm afraid that people are going to take my gun. And so then when somebody comes in and takes my gun, that doesn't get rid of the fear. It just makes me have stronger fear. So in a way, it can make me double down and triple down on wanting to hold on to the thing. And so, for example, if somebody is owning an automatic rifle or semi-automatic rifle because they are terrified of their neighbors, and the government comes in and says, we're going to take your guns, I don't think they'll want that to happen. Because if I'm terrified of my neighbors with a gun, I will probably be even more terrified of them without a gun. And when I say terrified, I mean deeply afraid that neighbors or people in the community will either break into my house and steal things that I've worked hard for, steal my house, steal my kid or my spouse, or hurt my kid or my spouse or my parents, that they will basically take the things that I really, really care about. And so the gun, in maybe some of their eyes, helps to prevent people from coming in and taking the things I care about. So if the government says we're going to come in and take the gun, I don't think that strategy is going to work very well, because I bet you many of these people care a lot about the guns because they believe that it helps them care a lot about the people. Take care of the people. So I don't think that strategy works very well. I think the strategy works even worse. This idea of gun control or gun restrictions is even worse when we think about taking guns from people who don't trust the government. So a lot of people ask, well, what's the big problem with registering your gun? Well, if somebody owns a gun because they don't trust the government, why would they want to tell the government that they own the gun? They don't want the government knowing what guns they own and where they own the guns and who owns the guns. So, and so then maybe there's another element to it. If you have somebody who is who's not allowed to own a gun because of certain laws, so somebody who has a convicted felon or has a felony on their record, I believe they're not allowed to own a firearm, or maybe a specific type of firearm. And so now somebody who's not allowed to own one, why would they want to report it? Because if they report it, they're just going to take it. So they don't want people to know that they have this firearm. And if they, again, believe that they need it to protect themselves or protect their family or their property, because of the fear that they have of other people coming in and damaging or taking themselves, the property, or their loved ones, then they sure don't want to report the gun. And so for me, when I think about gun legislation, it's less about trying to take the guns away from people and more about trying to figure out why people want to have guns and then helping them work through the issues of why they want to have guns. If some people want to have guns because they want to go hunt, I think that's relatively okay. And I imagine those people probably would be open to registering their guns. I think the ones that want to have the semi-automatic rifles and stockpile guns in many ways aren't doing it for hunting purposes, but more for protection purposes. And to me, that says that there's a fear or a worry or a concern or something, some uncertainty about people coming in and hurting them and taking away things that they really care about. How do we work on that? Because not everyone has that. And I'm not blaming the people. I'm not blaming the people who have it for having it. I mean, we all go through different things in life, and we all have different traumas and that impact us in different ways. But this idea of trying to take the guns away from these people, I don't think is going to work. They're going to get very strong and push back against that, because if they believe that the gun is something that is protecting their life and the life of their loved ones, and arguably property is something that, for some people is something that they've worked their whole lives for, and they see a very intricate connection between the property and their life, then I don't think they're going to willingly give up these guns. So I personally believe a much better approach is to find out why, what they're feeling, how are they feeling that inspires them to own a gun and to own maybe a semi-automatic rifle, or to own some of these, or to own many guns. What's the inspiration behind it? Because I don't want to own a gun. I personally, in a way, maybe I'm more afraid of guns than I am of other people. If I have a gun, I'm more afraid that I'm going to use it on myself, or I'm going to use it on someone else when I get really angry or really depressed or really scared or really hopeless, that it's going to be a weapon that I'll use against somebody I care about, and then drive deep, 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 deep regret in myself afterwards. Plus criminal penalties and, being locked up in prison. So that's me. And I imagine there are many places around the world where people don't want to have guns. I know a lot of people who I don't think want to own a gun. Now, I don't know if that's because they're not afraid of other people coming in and taking their property or such, but I don't know. I've had my house robbed a few times when I lived in Tanzania. I had property robbed from me in Oakland, California. I broke into a car. Actually, I had a car broken into 2 or 3 times. They've taken stuff. I had my pocket picked a few times when I was in East Africa. Oh, I haven't been physically attacked too much, so I haven't been mugged. So maybe that hasn't inspired kind of that deep fear of others. I don't know. And I'm not claiming to know the answer for why these people want to have the guns, but I think if we want to resolve this problem, we won't resolve it very well by just putting a law and a rule on top of people because we have the majority. If we have the majority, I think we resolve a lot of this conflict by talking with people, by finding out why they want to have certain things and why we want to have certain things, and really trying to understand each other and communicate with each other on an emotional level. Find out why. Maybe it's not fear. Maybe some of these people don't want to have the gun because they're afraid of others. Maybe they want to have it because there's a certain element of power to having a gun, and they don't feel powerful. They feel very weak or frustrated in their lives or helpless. Maybe, I remember watching a documentary. It was talking about some younger African-American men in the U.S. And I think they were going around there riding four-wheelers in the streets. Four-wheeler is like an ATV. It's a vehicle that's typically used off-road. I think they were riding around in the streets of some downtown areas, and they would maybe just dirt bikes too, but they would do like wheelies all the time, and they would get in trouble by the cops. And I remember one of the kids or the young men in the movie saying that when he's riding down the street going fast, it's like the only time in his life where he really feels powerful. Gosh. So if we try to take away something like this without replacing it with another way for that person to feel powerful, it may not work, man. They may cling strongly to that feeling of power and the thing that gives them power. So I worry that many of our political discussions just happen at the surface, and then we talk about changing the law or changing the rule without understanding why people are doing the things they're doing, and without trying to take a more systemic approach to resolving the conflict. If I just come in and try to do a certain rule and take something away from somebody, it may have very deep unintended consequences. But if I go in and I talk with the person and I explain myself and where I'm coming from and what I'm feeling and why I don't want guns in society or why I want fewer guns in society, and they explain to me why they want to have a gun, and then we go to 1 or 2 or 3 levels deeper to figure out what's really behind this, what are the deeper emotions that are causing these things, then I think whether it's gun control or whether it's abortion or whether it's the police, Black lives, police versus Black lives issue, or whether it's U.S. versus China, whether it's any of these conflicts that seem to just perpetuate. If we could do this, I believe that we can come much closer to resolving them, not just putting a Band-Aid on top of them and hoping that they go away. Part of the idea of having the show is to have a space for me to talk about some of these issues more deeply, for you to hear at least one person's perspective on them, for you to start thinking about the conversation on a deeper level, and maybe inspire you to have conversations with some of your friends and family on a deeper level, or even the strangers on Twitter. Twitter's a hard place to do it, but it's possible. It's just maybe a little more difficult because of the format and the nature of it. I think. Oh, and also, for a place where I could have conversations with other people, for those who are willing and excited to come on the show to sit down and talk about some of these murkier, confusing, conflict-laden issues, and really kind of dig into them, not from a societal standpoint, but more from a personal standpoint. I believe strongly that the political is personal and the personal is political, and that how we are feeling in our lives personally impacts how we look at the world politically. And so for me, I just hope that some of these shows can really one, open me up a little more, or show more of my thoughts and my feelings on the world to you, but also serve as a platform to inspire conversation in you and with other people, to open up your hearts and their hearts a little more, to be honest and tell the truth about why we're thinking the things we are, or how we're feeling in different moments of life. Because at the end of the day, if we make all the laws that we think are correct, and we do all the external things that we think we want, but it doesn't jive with what we're feeling on the inside, what's the point of it all? So I hope today was somewhat inspiring. I used that word multiple times today, but así es, as they would say in Spanish. That's how it is. So in summary, I personally want us to go vote for a landslide, because I think that gets a lot of people out to vote, regardless of who you want to vote for. Try to win by as much as possible when it comes to the election, following the rules, playing within the rules. And yeah, let's try to dig deeper about why people want to own guns, why people don't want to own guns, and the feelings that so many of us are feeling but not saying to each other. And on that note, au revoir. Ciao.